Southern France in the mid-16th century. An old man looks to the stars. He's a prophet, and people say he can foresee the future. A future which will bring death and destruction. A comet will fall from the heavens, predicts this soothsayer. A heavenly body made of stone and ice. It will fall to earth and extinguish life as we know it. An inferno, a nightmare, a firestorm, leaving nothing in its wake but death and ice. An apocalyptic vision. No one has made such dire predictions concerning the fate of our planet as this prophet from the south of France. And no one has been as widely believed as this man to this day. His name? Nostradamus. His life and work remain controversial to this day. Was he a genius or a profiteer? A prophet or a charlatan? Who was Nostradamus? He penned almost 1,000 prophetic verses over 400 years ago. He is said to have predicted Hitler's reign of terror, the French Revolution, Napoleon, and eventually the end of the world. Even while he was still alive, this little booklet was a bestseller, the Prophecies. But to this day, no one has been able to provide a conclusive interpretation of these verses. They remain the playthings of people's imaginations. Like the verse which alludes to the year 1999, a tyrant king will come from the sky. Comet, nuclear war, or natural disaster? What might Nostradamus have meant?
(1999) is the end of our century and of our millennium. Many people recall Nostradamus' words and say he predicted the end of the world. And this is why many people, especially in Japan incidentally, call Nostradamus the prophet of the apocalypse.
Nostradamus, the prophet of the apocalypse, the prophet of doom. His prophetic verses are ambiguous, however. He had to obscure reality so as not to deliver it into the hands of the enemies of truth, as he himself wrote. Fear of the Inquisition. And so to this day, Nostradamus experts around the world seek the true key to the prophecies, nowadays enlisting the help of the latest technology. Deciphering expert Manfred Dimder has stored all 4,000 verses of the prophecies in his computer. He's convinced that secret messages are hidden in these texts. They can be revealed with the help of a computer. As in century 10, verse 100, Le Grand Empire sera par Angleterre, which means the great empire will be brought forth by England. The computer program first deletes all the spaces between the words. The result? A chain of letters, which is then divided up again. By a program that accesses a glossary with thousands of old French words. This application breaks up the words in a completely different manner. The verse is transformed. Now it reads, "The great millennium will bring a terrible era through England." Words behind words, a game of hide and seek. Manfred Dimder believes that Nostradamus had to obscure his knowledge to avoid being censored by the church. Another example of deciphering. The common phrase Ave Maria et Apostolis may contain a hidden reference. It can be revealed by means of the Scrabble method. If you arrange the letters according to a certain pattern, in the shape of a diamond, 3 new lines of text appear. The letters in the middle line spell out a different Latin word, veritas, truth. Did Nostradamus wish to stress important messages in his text using this method?
Through the use of systematic text analysis, it is possible to see how things were done in the Middle Ages. You can see quite clearly how entire sentences suddenly appear which were previously virtually invisible. Thanks to computers and word processing programs, we can now analyze and reveal things in minutes, even seconds, which it was not possible to reveal 20, 30 years ago.
The city of Saint-Rémy in the south of France. This house held the cradle of the mysterious prophet. The memorial plaque bears his date of birth, the 14th of December, 1503. Tumble-down walls, empty windows. Nothing recalls the inhabitants' former prosperity. Today, it's filled with junk, a storeroom of history. It must have been quite splendid once, back then, when both of Nostradamus's grandfathers were advisors to the Count of Provence. Jewish intellectuals, highly respected and well-to-do. Young Nostradamus grows up in this mysterious world, a period of transition between medieval and modern times, in which an advisor to the king is both physician and alchemist, as well as astrologer and conjurer. In a time where old superstitions and modern science overlap, where people eagerly seek the secret of life, the philosopher's stone, immortality. What he sees in his grandfather's house will occupy him all his life. Early on, he's called the little astrologer. His questions are those of an adult, the dangerous questions. A loner, a visionary, even as a child. Someone who reads the future by observing nature around him. Not far away, only a few kilometers from the house in Saint-Rémy, is Glanom, an ancient Roman city. Young Nostradamus roams the ruins, fleeting visits to a lost world, which was once filled with life. What is the meaning of time here? The past? The future? The mausoleum of Glanom is like a message from the depths of history. The weathered stone portrays a great myth of the ancients. Heracles kills the queen of the Amazons in a battle. Years later, Nostradamus will have a similar vision. He will see King Henry II of France die in a tournament. His eye will be pierced by a lance. The prophecy is fulfilled and makes Nostradamus a legend in his own time. Near the ancient city, a Roman quarry. For 2,000 years, a mysterious stone obelisk has stood in an abandoned field. A clue? A sign already visible in Nostradamus' time? The treasure of Glanom is hidden here somewhere, goes a rumor among the locals, even today. And Nostradamus is said to have hidden the key to its whereabouts in his verses.
Voilà, j'ai trouvé cette pièce au pied du témoin là. C'était mon père qui travaillait avec son mulet.
Here, this is an ancient coin. I found it here on a rock when I was a child, when I was plowing the field with my father. According to Nostradamus' prophecies, the treasure of Glanom was buried in this area one moonless night.
Il a dit dans cette tablette
I was born here and I know a lot about it, but I will take all these secrets with me to my grave. I will never speak of them.
Il y a des secrets que je m'emporterai ces secrets dans mon tombeau, que je ne dirai jamais.
A 2,000-year-old rock cavern. Even this place, where the farmer stores his old farm implements, could be the secret hiding place of the Glanom gold, or so the treasure hunters believe. But so much of the information surrounding Nostradamus is legend, conjecture, myth. Not only the treasure of Glanom, but also the life of the prophet himself is shrouded in mystery. Very little authentic historical evidence has been preserved. These things are the real treasures. Like this painted copper plate. It reveals to us what he looked like. A portrait of Nostradamus painted by his son, César. Dignified and serious is how his contemporaries describe him, yet he was a rebel all his life. His name is listed in the student roster of the Faculty of Medicine in Montpellier. But at some point, the dean crossed out his name. He pursued exceedingly unconventional methods, according to the scribbled allegations. And the Faculty of Medicine in Montpellier was already the most progressive of its day. In these halls, students are not only instructed in the teachings of the ancients. Here they can also pursue new research on dead bodies. The university in Montpellier is the only one in France with the right to dissect one corpse a year, but they can only work on the bodies of heretics that were killed. Anatomical studies on corpses. This is the medical sensation of the time. It represents the progress of a new age. And the books of the time that report about them express amazement, in words and in images. But even Montpellier, the most progressive of cities, is not spared a terrible disaster, which strikes in 1525. The plague invades the city. Nostradamus, who is still far from being a full-fledged doctor, experiences the horror firsthand. Disfigured men, women's faces dissolved in tears, children gone wild, the old grown stiff are the words he uses to describe the agony. He helps wherever he can. His methods are unconventional. Instead of bleeding the victims as is customary, he prescribes cleansing baths. Nobody understands why, but his methods prove successful, and he survives the horror. He starts to experiment with plant extracts, a pill to treat the plague. But doctors swear by bloodletting and condemn his remedy as the work of the devil. But Nostradamus had already observed the therapeutic effect of plants even as a student, to the doctor's chagrin, making them turn against him. Nostradamus, a provocateur, what's the secret of his medicine? Roses are the main ingredient. 400 rosebuds plucked at dawn. But can natural medicine triumph over this scourge? A third of the population fell victim to it in the Middle Ages. We're going to attempt to reproduce this remedy for the plague in the lab, following Nostradamus's recipe word for word, as it was concocted over 400 years ago. Scientists have developed a variety of theories concerning what happened back then. Did mildew spores perhaps develop on the wet rose petals, resulting in an antibiotic effect? And what about the other ingredients? Pollen from the iris blossom, powder from the woody aloe plant, sawdust from green cypresses? We know amazingly little about the effects of such plant extracts even today. The remedy is prepared exactly as described by Nostradamus in his writings, and as he must have done so himself countless times. Nostradamus's ancient mortar is replaced by sterile, high-tech equipment. The Middle Ages meet the 20th century. Rare shoots of an Indian shrub, Acorus calamus, are carefully boiled in a distillery to extract their aromatic oil. Not an everyday task for a lab technician, because calamus oil is not easy to produce, not even using modern methods. Several kilograms of the root are required to distill just a few drops of the precious fluid. Calamus oil. Is this precious golden liquid the secret behind the success of the plague remedy? Scientists have found references in old books indicating that its pungent aroma appears to drive away vermin. The rodent flea is the carrier of the Black Death. Did calamus oil break the chain of infection by driving away the carrier of the disease, the flea? Nostradamus's wonder drug is ready. The mass must now be kneaded like dough into pills. All those who took it were cured, while the others perished, wrote Nostradamus. The Institut Pasteur in Paris, a research center for bacterial diseases, one of the few places left on Earth where it still exists, the plague. The high-security lab is separated from the outside world by a number of low-pressure airlocks. Every single case of the plague in the world is recorded and investigated here. Since the discovery of antibiotics, the Black Death has lost most of its horror, but local epidemics still flare up from time to time. Plague research remains a current concern. The heart of the department, a P3 laboratory, electronically bolted and additionally sealed off by two low-pressure airlocks. Professor Carniel, the director of the department, prepares herself for an encounter of the most remarkable kind. Airlock 3, the maximum security level. They are kept in these cold storage units in Petri dishes, a wide variety of strains of Yersinia pestis, the plague pathogen. They look like harmless droplets of fat, but they are actually countless millions of deadly pathogens. One single bacterium, if inhaled, could infect the lungs with the plague. Under a microscope, you can see them quite clearly. Minuscule rods measuring mere hundredths of a millimeter. Frozen harbingers of death. It's time to put Nostradamus's remedy to the test. Will it be able to neutralize or reduce these cultures of Yersinia pestis? The scientists can only test its effectiveness in the lab, in a test tube. Today, it's no longer possible to find out how the medication would work in the body of an infected person. Besides, attempting to do so would be medically irresponsible. Still, measurements of bacterial density made by the computer chromatograph indicate a steady decrease in the number of pathogens, an antibacterial effect.
Bien, on peut constater que ce remède de Nostradamus.
We can conclude that Nostradamus' medicine consists of particular essential oils which have an antiseptic, antibacterial effect. This medication would therefore certainly serve to protect a person from infection.
In 1532, Nostradamus goes on tour with his successful remedy through the countryside of southern France. At this time, plague doctors are hired by the cities and paid according to their success rate. Their travels follow the path of the epidemic and take them straight into the heart of the horror. Carcassonne, Toulouse, Bordeaux, Salon, Malmort. Somewhere around here, Nostradamus receives a message from one of the most famous scientists of the time, Julius Scaliger. Scaliger has heard of his success and invites him to his home in Agen. He will work and conduct research together with him in this house on the Place Esquirol. Alchemy experiments. Rumors abound of forbidden scientific circles, of secrets handed down through the ages which are jealously guarded here. Concealed from the curious eyes of the Inquisition, for 3 years Nostradamus and Scaliger work together, and the wise old man reveals the full body of his knowledge. Every evening they ascend the spiral stone staircase to the roof of the building, where they seek to unlock the secrets of the heavens. Reaching for the stars, Nostradamus has reached the pinnacle of his career. And he gets married. The fresh new days of love have dawned for him, as he will later say. His wife, a wealthy patrician from the city's high society. She will bear him 2 children. It appears as though Nostradamus has a firm hold on his destiny. A match made in heaven, a happy family. But then disaster strikes, and even the renowned Nostradamus is powerless in the face of it. The plague rages in Agen. Within a few short weeks, entire streets are depopulated. Nostradamus is able to save his own life, but not the lives of his wife and children. How quickly things change. Suddenly, Nostradamus' luck has taken a turn for the worse. The relatives of the dead woman demand that the dowry be returned. There's even talk of malicious intent. Might the quack healer be in league with the forces of evil? His patients desert him. Nostradamus has hit rock bottom. He's destitute. Eventually, the plague fire even devours his infested clothing. And the Holy Inquisition is at his heels. He's afraid of being tortured, afraid of the terrible punishments, afraid of being branded a heretic and warlock and dying in the church's catacombs. No one is willing to protect him now. He flees. For 6 long years, he's a fugitive, through the south of France to Italy, and then on to Sicily, perhaps even as far as Egypt. These 6 years are shrouded in mystery. Did Nostradamus see the pyramids? And did he decipher the enigmatic script of the ancient Egyptians, the hieroglyphics? One thing is certain. During this time, Nostradamus writes a book dealing with the translation of hieroglyphics, the Book of Horus Apollo, son of Osiris, king of Egypt. This is what he calls his work. This handwritten book has been preserved to this day. The National Library in Paris. Behind these walls, Nostradamus's original manuscript is as strictly guarded as crown jewels. The Bibliothèque Nationale houses millions of volumes from all ages, includes thousands of works precious to bibliophiles. Nostradamus's Horus Apollo is considered to be a particularly valuable treasure, despite the fact that the little booklet is only bound in wrapping paper. There's only one copy in the world. Not only that, it's the only work which provides a sample of the prophet's handwriting. The handwriting is more interesting than the book's actual contents, which prove to be simply a translation of an ancient text, ancient Greek Druidic sources put into verse, as he describes it. What does handwriting say about a person? 500 kilometers west of Paris, near the city of Brest in Brittany, there lives an old woman who can answer this question. Madame Serblot is well over 80 years old, but she remains a respected authority in her field. Her speciality, medieval graphology, handwriting analysis.
This handwriting says a lot about his inner life. You can see that the author is not acting under pretense, and that he believes in what he says. He is a very sensitive, profound person, somebody who is very friendly toward his fellow man. This is shown by the handwriting's slight slant to the right. Very natural, very modest. He is open to his environment. He must have been a very endearing person, a communicative person. It's interesting to note that there's nothing extreme to be seen, as one might expect of Nostradamus. Nothing points to anything out of the ordinary, to the special ability which made him famous. And you can see quite clearly that he always writes from top to bottom, from heaven to earth. This shows he was a medieval man oriented toward Christianity, of a rather non-materialistic nature, and strongly rooted in the Christian faith. A Christian, that much is certain.
Nostradamus' support for the church is revealed in this historical document. The story of a crime in which the church made use of the prophet's talents. Thieves had stolen the silver candlesticks from the church in Orange, a considerable loss. But then the bishop had a brilliant idea. In an official letter, he bids Nostradamus to use his ability as a seer to track down the thieves. Nostradamus replies with an obscure horoscope. To this day, nobody has been able to provide a conclusive interpretation of these symbols. But what the prophet writes is quite concrete. He asks the bishop to read his letter out to the congregation. In it, he claims to foresee that a terrible plague will beset the city of Orange if the church's belongings are not returned. He says the thieves will die a horrible death. A true prophecy, or merely a clever psychological ruse? It appears Nostradamus is not loath to use a trick or two, and the church is thankful to him for it. The renowned prophet and the church, truly an odd couple. In the papal palace of Avignon, the center of Catholic power in Provence, is a familiar sight. He cultivates relations here, particularly with a certain high-ranking bishop. In the course of these encounters, Nostradamus must have visited the chapel of St. John. He sees the rich images from the fourth Gospel, and he reads John's first words. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. He knows that centuries earlier, the church in southern France brutally hunted down a particular group of followers of St. John, the Cathars, a Christian sect which takes the words of the apostle literally, which preaches strict asceticism and the simple life, and thereby proves to be a major thorn in the side of the powerful high dignitaries of the church. Even though Nostradamus takes great pains to maintain appearances in his relationship with the church, rumors persist he's secretly a heretic. Meetings are said to have taken place in the city church of Salon. Gatherings of conspirators who challenge Catholic dogma, the wealth of the church, the sacraments, the Old Testament, even the altars and the cross. To this day, researchers believe that the heretic tradition of the Cathars was kept alive here, and that their secret leader was Nostradamus. Salon de Provence, the city where Nostradamus spends the second half of his life. A small medieval city, far from the metropolis of Paris, a city which offers safety through its very remoteness. A few steps away from the city church, the house where the prophet lived, today a small museum. This is how it might have been in 1550. Surrounded by books, Nostradamus sits at his desk, a brooder, a lone wolf, who seeks the security of the small city, maybe a secret opponent of the church. This handwritten Bible from the 12th century has been preserved to this day, the Cathar Bible, a translation of the New Testament into Romanic, the language of the common people. Montségur, almost 300 kilometers away from Salon, was the center of the movement. Nostradamus must have passed through here on his travels across the south of France, but he too would have seen only the ruins of what was once the Cathars' castle. Back in the mid-13th century, Catholic invaders stormed the castle, raining destruction on the place. Thousands of Cathars were brutally butchered. To this day, it's rumored that brave men continued the tradition in secret, men like Nostradamus, perhaps? A clue to this is to be found near the city church in Salon, in the cellars of the vicarage. Secret passageways connect the building with the residential areas of the city. Ancient pathways which initiates may have used to travel unnoticed to forbidden gatherings. But the truth remains shrouded in mystery. Long ago, the remaining passageways were filled in, following an earthquake at the beginning of the 20th century, which caused the catacombs to collapse, an earthquake which Nostradamus is said to have predicted. Nostradamus, the prophet of disaster, a somber voice of warning in the flowing stream of time. On the site of today's Louvre in Paris stood the palace of the King of France in the mid-16th century. Those were restless times. Catholics and Huguenots were at each other's throats. France's position in world affairs was weak. All of Europe was unstable, times of upheaval. In the summer of 1556, Nostradamus is called to the royal chambers. The uncertainty of the age boosts his popularity, especially with the king. He is to read the stars, to provide some light in these dark times. In the palace, Nostradamus meets a woman who will be utterly captivated by him. Katharine de Medici, the Queen of France, and a firm believer in miracles. Nostradamus will reveal to her a prophecy, foresee an event which will make her absolute ruler of France, the death of her husband. In a duel, he will be blinded in a golden cage, went the prediction, and die a cruel death. 100 gold pieces is reward for the prophecy which augurs death, as well as power for the queen. 3 years later, the prophecy will come true, word for word. The predicted duel, a friendly exhibition contest between the king and a count. The golden cage, the splendid golden armor which Henry II donned for the occasion. And the king is blinded by an accident. The splintering lance pierces his eye. After spending days in the throes of death, the king expires in great pain. The king is dead. Turmoil in the streets of Paris. The hunt is on for a scapegoat. Nostradamus is burned in effigy. It was the prophet who made the terrible prediction. Doesn't that mean he's to blame? The streets resound with the call, Nostradamus cast a spell on France. Anger rampages. Barbaric animals, mortal enemies of education, are the accusations leveled in disgust by Nostradamus against this mob, from the safety of distant Provence and under the Queen's protection. The fires burn but briefly and serve only to fire up interest in the prophet. He gains popularity as a prophet of doom, and he has retained that image to this day. In a computer studio, we've stored all publications of the Prophecies in a history program. The graph shows the times when Nostradamus' book proved particularly popular over the past 400 years. The first thing we notice, starting in 1968, there's a clear increase in the number of copies sold. Since 1980, there's been a veritable boom. The virtual history program shows the historical context. In September 1980, the war in the Gulf threatens world peace and the economic interests of the West, a crisis which fans fears that the end of the world is near. Ever since the Prophecies were first published in the mid-16th century, crises are the catalysts which boost sales of the book. Even around 1566, the year in which the prophet died. In more stable times, Nostradamus' work tends to be forgotten, but dramatic turning points in history rouse people's interest in predictions for the future. Take, for instance, 1789, the year of the French Revolution. The uncertainty of the age is reflected in the sales of Nostradamus' work, precisely mirrored. A leap forward in time. Nostradamus enjoys particular popularity around 1800. Europe is experiencing radical reorganization. A man of diminutive stature calls into question all existing borders, Napoleon Bonaparte. he goes to war against Great Britain, Austria, Prussia, and finally pits his Grande Armée against Russia. The deep uncertainty in this time of crisis provokes a veritable Nostradamus renaissance. Just like another date. In the 1940s, Nostradamus' books are all the rage. His prophecies are now being abused. The Frenchman Nostradamus predicted that Greater Germany would triumph, it said. Prophecies used to fuel propaganda. Interest in the Prophecies, a history of crises. What did Nostradamus intend to achieve with his perennially pertinent omens?
C'est pour interpeller les gens, pour leur dire s'ils se ressaisissent pas.
He meant to issue a warning to people, time and again, to tell them, if you don't change your ways, disaster will strike. I share this opinion. If mankind doesn't change, things inevitably will end in disaster, in the apocalypse.
Despite all manifestations of royal splendor, fear of the apocalypse must have moved Katharine de Medici more than 400 years before our time. She was filled with a profound sense of helplessness, which in 1564 led her, in the company of an enormous entourage, to seek out Nostradamus in Salon. The unity of the land is threatened by an apocalyptic conflict which she, as the Queen of France, must withstand. The Huguenots versus the Catholics, mortal enemies. The glamour of a royal visit. To this day, the 18th of October 1564 is commemorated as a holiday in Provence. For Nostradamus, this date represents the culmination of his achievements. He has become a prophet sought out by royalty. Musée de la Cour, a small museum in the old quarter of Salon, a museum with a motley collection of heirlooms from all over the region. The storeroom harbors generations' worth of goods bequeathed to the state, which haven't yet found a suitable place in an exhibition room. This mysterious oil painting is amongst the forgotten treasures. It shows Katharine de Medici's visit to Salon. At her side is Charles IX, her son, who will die at the age of 23. Then Nostradamus, portrayed as a figure of salvation. His hand rests baptism-like on the head of a naked youth. Henry of Navarre, who much later will become King of France. An almost biblical scene, with Nostradamus as God. The Paris courtiers, far away from the metropolis. Bucolic amusement. France's most distinguished lords and ladies have descended upon the Provence city like locusts on a harvest and show the locals a thing or two about world culture. An absurd spectacle. A dance of death? The fabric of French society has yet to face the most strenuous test of its strength, the fight between Huguenots and Catholics, which will have its bloody showdown in the massacre of Saint Bartholomew. But they don't know this yet. The future. That's the nightmare. Nostradamus believes in the end of the world. The prophet now observes unusual signs in nature which lead him to suspect the worst. He's brought a two-headed animal, monstrosities, signs of the apocalypse. He's driven by a new sense of agitation, his secretary later writes. First, he wanted to keep his gloomy premonitions to himself, but then he brought it all out into the open. Nostradamus now writes as if in a state of transport, verse after verse, prophecy as a form of ecstasy. The history of the world, a madhouse. And the course of events, always in motion. The globe, a dynamo of disaster. The earth, a ball of horror. And time, a merciless mechanism producing disaster after disaster until the grand finale, the end of the world. He wanted to warn people, Nostradamus claimed. His verses permit any number of interpretations. His warnings fit any century. Nostradamus reveals to each generation the dangers of its time. By June 1566, when Nostradamus is confined to his deathbed at his home in Salon, he has already become a legend. And he's a rich man. Nostradamus was the first man of the modern era to turn prophecy into a profitable business. He even maintained a working relationship with the most powerful institution of his time, the Church. His constant profession of faith in the Christian God dispersed all suspicions that he might be in league with the forces of evil. In his last will and testament, which he dictates to his secretary, he distributes his wealth between his second wife and his children, as painstaking as a bookkeeper. There's no more talk of the apocalypse. Nostradamus's last signature shows how much difficulty the gouty prophet had in signing his name as the end neared. His remains lie in the Church of St. Lawrence in Salon. The prophet of doom was buried as a good Christian in a side chapel dedicated to the Virgin Mary. May the afterworld permit his remains to rest in peace, is written on the marble slab. This wish is not fulfilled. Time and again his grave has been opened to curious eyes, always in the expectation of some mysterious revelation. The last to do so were German occupation forces in World War II, followed by American soldiers. They did not manage to uncover Nostradamus' secret. The future remains hidden in his verses.